So the reason that we're doing the top movies of 1976 list separately is one, we forgot to do it when we did our our 1976 episode, F for Fake and
Solaris, I think.
Solaris. The other reason is those movies didn't come out in 1976. So it's nice for us to talk about some movies that actually came out in 1976. If you don't know, Jake has a rule that I'm willing to abide by, even though it makes much more sense to do those things now than it did for back then,
Yeah.
is we review movies based on what year they were released wide or even limited in the United States. So F for Fake came out a couple years before, quite a few years before 1976, and took forever to get released wide in the United States. I think it was 72 or 73.
73, I think. Yeah.
And then Solaris, I believe, came out the year before, or maybe 2 years
I thought
before.
it was 72 or 73 also. Yeah.
Oh, well, either way, it's a Russian movie, so it took a minute for it to
Yeah.
get over here. But there are some great movies that came out in 1976. So we are going to do our top five movies of 76. Why don't you get us started?
Sure. Number five is a movie I don't have a star rating for. I haven't seen it in a while, but I do recall liking it. Is Mel Brooks' Silent Movie, which is
I've never seen it, but I have it on DVD.
oh yeah, you should definitely watch it. I mean, it's a silent movie, and it's pretty funny. And then four through one are I think I consider all four of these to be all timers,
I bet I
and
can guess what they are based on, I mean, they're on my list also.
probably yeah. I
Yeah.
think these are all timers. I love every one of them. I had a hard time ranking them. These are all five-star classics for me. Number four is Rocky, the film that made Sylvester Stallone a star.
We don't have the same number one.
Oh, we don't. Is that well?
That's a spoiler for my
You
number
just
one.
gave it
But
away, yeah. And
yeah.
and you know what? On another day, that could be my number one. I mean, I love this movie. I think it's still the best movie Stallone's ever been in. I think it's his best character. I love it. I love everything about this movie. My number three is Scorsese's Taxi Driver. I mean, classic De Niro performance. Jodie Foster, Harvey Keitel. I think most people listening to this have some familiarity with Taxi Driver. Number two is Network. Again, just another classic. Peter Finch, Faye Dunaway, the newsman who goes crazy. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. That whole scene, comes from that movie, and that movie's great. It holds up. It's still relevant today. And then number one, another movie that holds up really, really well that I've watched fairly recently, Dustin Hoffman, Robert Redford, All the President's Men, one of the greatest journalism movies ever made about
Right.
Woodward and Bernstein.
Yeah. The story of taking down Richard Nixon in the Watergate scandal. Really
Yep.
good. And one of my honorable mentions. Now, it's ranked my number six movie of 1976. I like it a lot, but you talked about it in glowing terms. So I want to talk about two other movies as honorable mentions. They are not as good as each other, but they are both vehicles for the late, great Peter Ustinov, someone who I am almost as obsessed with as I am Walter Matthau. So I always have to mention his movies. The Treasure of Matacumbe. Now, this is a Disney film that he was in where he played like a professor type, helping some kids get through the swamps of Florida to get to a treasure. It's a 70s Disney movie. It is exactly what you think it might be. If you have no idea, you should watch some 70s Disney movies. They're unhinged.
When I watched Pete's Dragon, when like the new one was coming out in 2016, like I haven't seen Pete's Dragon. Well, I'm gonna watch that. It blew my mind.
Yep.
This thing was so weird.
Yep. They were on so many drugs in the 70s in Disney. It's
It's
wild.
very apparent.
The other is a sci-fi classic. It's called Logan's Run. Have you ever seen Logan's Run?
If I have, it's so long that I don't remember.
It's really fun. It stars Michael York, who most people know as playing Basil Exposition in Austin Powers. This is what I know him from. He's a man in the future with a jewel in his hand, and the jewel tells him when he's going to die. Everyone in this society dies when they're young, and it's really like an anti-fascism movie, and he wants to break free of it. A woman tips him off that there's a better world out there to be had, and eventually they do make it to the real world, and it's trashed. And there they find in the White House, or maybe it's in the halls of Congress, a homeless Peter Ustinov who's just hanging out with cats. It's
Nice.
also unhinged. The 70s were crazy. Logan's Run's a lot of fun. Okay, my number five. You mentioned a Dustin Hoffman movie. I'm going to mention another Dustin Hoffman movie. My number five is Marathon Man. It's a movie about a guy who likes to run marathons. His brother, played by not Robin Williams, by Dustin Hoffman. His brother, played by Roy Scheider, comes to town, and it turns out Roy Scheider is involved in some high-level spy hijinks involving a Nazi who I believe was brought over in Operation Paperclip or something like it. This Nazi is played by the great Laurence Olivier.
Wow.
And if you've ever heard of the movie where an evil dentist, drills into someone's teeth to torture them, that's this. Last act of the movie is mostly Dustin Hoffman being tortured via cavity filling. It's pretty wild. I like this movie obviously a lot. It's in my top 5. And one of the great non-Jaws Roy Scheider films. My number 4 is The Bad News Bears, speaking of Walter Matthau. Talked about this movie a lot in my Walter Matthau episode, but this is the superlative Bad News Bears. Better than all of its sequels, better than the Richard Linklater version. About a drunk, washed-up baseball character who comes to help a Little League team. It's really racist, and it's really, really funny. My number 3, just like you, is Taxi Driver. Robert De Niro is potentially a Vietnam vet who goes on a rampage, or wants to go on a rampage. It's a psychological deconstruction of mental health. He's great in it. Sybil Shepherd is amazing. Jodie Foster, really good in a very early role for her, very controversial early role for her.
Yeah.
Also has an unsung great performance from Albert Brooks.
Yeah, Albert Brooks, and even Scorsese himself has a small performance in it.
But it's very important. It's a very important performance because he is the person who is in the taxi.
Yeah.
And Harvey Keitel has a big role at the end.
Yep.
And then because it's a 70s movie, Peter Boyle is also in it.
Right, of course.
My number 2 is Sidney Lumet's Network, just like you. Love Network, love Lumet. Peter Finch goes crazy on television, and it's about how the rest of the media political apparatus circles the wagons to delegitimize him, and then worse at the end because he becomes very popular because of his outbursts on television. And then my number 1 is Rocky. I spoiled it earlier. I agree with you. It's the best Stallone movie. It's by far the best Rocky movie, although I really like Rocky 2 also.
2 is really good, yeah.
And I like Creed.
I like all 3 Creeds, honestly.
I thought the third one was so. I like that Michael B. Jordan was trying something different with the style.
Mhm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just like I'm like, I want a boxing movie that has boxing in it and not a cartoon. Like that sideways block thing that what's his name? He Who Shall Not Be Named kept doing.
Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors, who we'll never see again.
Right, he's done.
He's done. What was that? That was a weird move. That's gonna break your almost.
I forgot about that.
But yeah, it's fine. Rocky's incredible, and that's it. That's our top 5 of 1976. We did it. We talked about some movies that are actually from 1976.
Good for us.